Hey guys, welcome back to another campaign diary. Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode. Hopefully this week should be a little more thought out, a little more seem less a little rushed than last week's, because this week is a little less rushed. So when last we left our heroes, in the last session, our heroes had made it to Tet. They talked to Fleetfoot, and they started making some political arrangements with him. They gave him the hammer, and then he sent them off to talk to some of the various families and try and convince them to now support Fleetfoot now that he has the hammer. This symbol of authority that the heroes had recovered. So naturally, our heroes, being the good people they are, they went out and talked to some of the various families and tried to do their best to convince them. Of course, in the midst of their negotiations, our players have met with the horrific news that Fleetfoot has been killed and the hammer is stolen. And at which point they are then approached by another dwarf, Egren, the nephew of Fleetfoot, who explains that he wishes to now take Fleetfoot's place, how he wants to now try and become the new Veruk, and that he holds a lot of the same views and positions in politics that Fleetfoot did. And really, I made Egren basically be Fleetfoot in a lot of ways. It just gave the players a chance to see a new Veruk rise to power. So that's a little kind of tidbit. And so, of course, they then had to go and talk to more of the families, try and convince these families to then come and support Egren, which worked well. And then eventually, they go to council, and Egren is elected the new Veruk, the new chief of this hall, Tet. At which point, then talking to Egren, Egren's like, hey, I will charter a boat for you guys to get to your home continent. However, I need you guys to do me one last favor. Head into these tunnels beneath Tet. Rescue Rasalaax, who is the court magician, the court sorcerer. He has it's the same title. It's just whatever people kind of call him. The court wizard, you might call him as well. He's a dragonborn sorcerer, and he had been captured by the assassins and taken below into some of these tunnels. And Egren believes him to be held in this keep, in this drow keep deep beneath Tet in some of these tunnels. These tunnels are called the lower reaches, and Egren hands the players a map and he says, hey, here's these guys. He points out where some of the various dangers are, where Tet is. Here's Thithlith Keep, the place they believe Rasalaax to be in there. And they also believe, of course, the hammer to be down there. And so the players started down the pass, and I had a lot of fun just watching them. And I think they enjoyed it, kind of picking a route, because there were numerous routes they could take. And so they headed down, they ran into the Myconids, and they ran into the Grell, which they both dispatched with some challenge, but it wasn't horrifying. They weren't scared for their lives, but it was a challenge to defeating them all. And that was roughly where we kind of paused it. So when we played next, I had a bit of an interesting dilemma. Naturally, I play multiple games of D&D. This is not my only campaign. I also DM for another group of friends, for actually my best friend Nathaniel, his buddy Teddy, and our mutual friend Anthony, who, great guys. I really enjoy their stories, and I've thought about maybe doing a campaign diary for what they do, because they get a little more into not just politics, but they have a castle, and they're actually forming a country, and there's some really cool stuff that's going on with their story, and a lot of it is more character-driven. But enough about that. The point is, the reason I bring them up is because they actually played with our heroes here this last time we played. Well, I won't say this last time, but here for this session. And what I mean by that was, what exactly happened is my other group, my Anthony, Nathaniel, Teddy, they approached me and said, hey, we'd like to play. Meanwhile, my band group says, hey, we'd like to play. And I don't have a set schedule. Because everyone I work with and everyone I play with is all so busy and all our schedules are kind of wonky, we don't have a set schedule where we say, we play, Friday afternoon, this time to this time every week. No, that just doesn't work for any of us. So it's a little more, I will usually say, guys, hey, can you guys play this time? And they're like, yeah, sure, we can play. And every now and then they're like, hey, can we play? We'd like to get going. And they'll approach me. Well, so my all guys group, they approached me, they said they want to play. My band group had approached me, said they wanted to play. I only had limited time. I really only had enough time for maybe one session. I could only do one group, and I thought, well, I really want to play with both groups. And I actually had a great idea, I felt. What I did is I texted. I felt I had a pretty good idea. So what I did is I texted my band group, And I said, hey guys, we're going to play, I think it was Friday night. We're going to play Friday night, usual 7 to 11. Come on over. We'll have a great time. What I then did is I went over and I texted my other group, all the guys, and I said, all right, guys, we're going to play Friday night. However, we're not going to play our session. We're not going to play your guys' campaign. What we're going to do is I'm going to have you guys play the NPCs of my band group. And so what I did is okay, Nathaniel, I want you to, you're going to play, here's Cormel, Teddy, here's Grunka, and what was supposed to happen is I knew during this session, the band group would come across a couple prisoners who were who had escaped this Dithalith keep, this place down, they had escaped this drow keep and had been recaptured, and so now being marched back to the keep. Now, this was in there for another reason, which I'll come back to later. But amongst that group would be another NPC, a couple NPCs, and so I felt, hey, Anthony can play this NPC, and so I was like, hey guys, here's the character sheets. They showed up, and of course, all of my band crew gets there, and then there's a knock on the door, and they're like, well, everyone's here, who's left? And then all of a sudden, these 3 guys walk in, they're like, what's going on? And I explained the situation, everyone was like, okay, we're fine with it, so I actually had to get take the extra leaf from my table. So I had to expand my table, bring in a ton of extra chairs. Because I think at this point we had somewhere close to 10 to 11 people sitting around the table. Because we had most of the band group. I think the only person we were missing was Sydney. So this is the way it was going down. And so we're players, our party, they start up, kind of right after defeating the Grell, and they continue down the path in the lower reaches. And they follow it, and they keep going, and I use this in a good time, explaining what it was like to, travel in this cave. And eventually they came to a fork in the road, and they're like, okay, which way do we go? They did some survival checks to figure out, okay, where are we kind of on the map? Which way makes the most sense? And they make the right choice. It was pretty easy, and they continue down. And then they start hearing the sounds of, these big kind of hulking, they can kind of these sounds of big creatures kind of moaning and sort of talking or something. Meanwhile, they can also kind of feel things shaking a little bit with heavy footsteps. And what it was is they were coming across a little cavern, just a tiny little inlet in the cave system that was home to a couple large troll-like creatures. They're not actual trolls, and I should say more like ogre-like creatures. And our players, and what they did was really cool, is they sent a couple of the sneakier members ahead, and they sent them that way they could sneak around, kind of get around and start figuring out, okay, what's going on. I think they sent Illisvir, and I think maybe Danny went ahead. Now I say Illisvir, not Sam, for certain reasons that will come up in a little bit. And so they sent Illisvir, and they sent Alea, they sent Danny, and they sneak across, and they kind of oh yeah, sure enough, it's these large troll ogre-like creatures, and Danny's actually like, okay, can I roll a history check to see what they are? And I said, sure, you can. He rolled and, failed, and Sam's Illisvir's like, can I do the same thing? I was like, sure, roll, and he rolls, and he fails. I said, well, you guys, they're like giants, ogres, giants, something like that, but they're very sickly. They've got these lumps and gross on them, and they're like this weird purple skin. They just look gross, and they're like, okay, we don't quite remember what these are, but all right, that gives us an idea. And basically, they tried to sneak everyone past, but eventually someone failed their stealth check, and it was pretty soon combat time. We entered initiative, and they started messing around. We entered initiative, and we started slogging our way through these 3 creatures, which turned out to be Fomorians. Eventually, someone said, hey, I want to try again with a history check. Do I remember? And at this point, they succeeded. I said, okay, they're called Fomorians. They're these ogre-like creatures, blah, 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 blah. I gave them a little bit, just a bit of background information. And the players were like, okay, that's satisfactory. And it was a bit of a slog, I won't even call it a slog, but it was kind of just, a simple, just straightforward combat. Let's just get through these enemies, let's move on. We get our experience, great. We continue onward. Now, because the players had spent so long trying to sneak people past kind of almost one at a time, it took a while to get there. And so by the time we finally ended initiative, it was about 2 hours into the session. And now part of that was also because the players as actual people, took a while kind of, sitting down and focusing, because all of a sudden you have 3 new people at the table who they've never met. Well, most of them have never met these players, and so they're getting to meet. And I had plenty of content, planned out, and I actually took out an encounter, and I thought, I'm going to save this for later. We've had a lot of combat right now. Let's just keep moving. And so the players kept going, and it was fairly quiet. And at one point they come to another, branch, and they're thinking, do we want to go down here? And they look at the map, they're like, there's a bunch of trolls down here. We're not going to go down here. We're going to never mind. Now, I had snagged this little troll cavern thing. I had a bunch of stuff going on there that I thought would have been really kind of fun if the players had gone down there, mostly because I knew what was down there, and I had planned it all out. And I actually stole it from another D&D campaign I'm aware of, this Matt Koval guy. I stole his troll warrens. And I was really excited for it, but the players were like, we're going to bypass it, so I'm thinking we're going to have to use that later on at some point. And so the players continue that path, and they come to this last kind of main fork in the road. If you look at the map, it's like Tet is up here, and then the tunnel basically branches down to 3 main paths. 2 reconnect early on, but then the last one reconnects later on. And right as the third one kind of connects back in, that's where it goes down, and Dithlyth is not too far after that. I'll try and remember to scan the map, and upload it. So upon reaching this last little fork in the road, the players are like, okay, I'm like, okay guys, you guys are just going on. They're like, yep. I was like, alright, well, you guys come around the corner. And I said, roll perception checks. And they roll, and most people do fine. It's like, well, you guys are greeted by the sight of 3 drow escorting 2 other figures. And the players are like, wait, what? And they, and they're like, okay, someone's like, can I roll again? I was like, you know what, fine, sure. And so I explained, here's 3 drow, they're well decked out, they've got lots of arm, they've got lots of, weapons, and they look pretty set for battle. And they're escorting 2 figures. They're escorting, he's some sort of dwarf, he looks pretty brawny. There's this other guy, he looks older, he's human, it looks like. And this is where something else comes in. So a couple weeks before this session, Sam approached me and said, hey Peter, I'd like to make a new character. Illisvir's great and all, but he's pretty simple, and I had another idea for a new character. Now, at the time, the party was not as massive as it was, and at the same time, we also weren't running into some of the same issues with large party yet. And I'd seen Sam kind of, talk about this character just a hair. He'd mentioned it before, and I'm like, okay, I said, we'll talk about some more, let me think about it. And, a week or 2 later, we had played again, and he talked about how he had this idea for this one character, Gray, this human rogue, and he started, role-playing this character. I mean, just in between some stuff, as they're waiting for other people to take their turns in combat, he was role-playing this character in a previous session. And I was like, here's Sam really starting to role-play a character. That's interesting. I kind of like that because, again, Sam's been, I think, one of the quieter kids, and so I wanted to draw him out of his shell. And so I thought, here's a character that he's enjoying. He clearly has some idea of what this character's like, and he's enjoying just role-playing this character. So I said, sure, Sam, why don't you bring this character in? I've got an idea. I've got a great idea how to bring him in. And this was it. I figured this way they would have somebody who would have an idea of roughly what the keep was like. They could meet up with Gray here, who was being escorted back by the drow. He had been captured, and I said, Sam, you're going to have to figure out why was Gray, that's his name, Gray, the rogue, why was Gray captured by the drow? Why is he down here? And I explained, I know how you escaped roughly. There's a secret passage you can use if you remember it. That'll take you straight to the dungeons where Rasalaax is, more or less. I didn't actually tell him that's where Rasalaax is, but I said, hey, there's some stuff where if you try to remember and roll a decent history check regarding the keep, there's some information that could be very useful. And so the players run into this patrol, these guards, and they're like, do these guys look friendly? Do these prisoners look friendly? And I was like, yeah, they look friendly. And they're like, we attack. We just it's not surprised because the drow kind of turn on them and kind of like, the huge party walks right out of this tunnel into another tunnel just to run into these other bunch of drow, and they're like, so the drow are like stopping, like not quite sure what to do. At which point the party is like, yeah, we'll attack. We definitely attack. And I said, all right, roll initiative. And this is where, I said, okay, Sam, I explained, okay, guys, this human, this is a rogue, this is Gray, this is Sam's new character, Sam's going to play him. Meanwhile, this other dwarf guy, this was the NPC that Anthony was playing. Poor Anthony had to wait for most of the session just sitting there. I mean, he talked a lot, so I think he had a decent time. He got to talk to people and kind of hang out, but he wasn't playing too much until here at the end. And it was still only 3 drow, but I gave him some, some plus couple leather armor. I gave him a bunch of cool weapons and the ability to attack a couple times and have some, not a ton of abilities, some fairly simple guys, but I figured this would make him kind of a bit of a challenge. Plus, I said, Gray and the dwarf are in handcuffs. So that was something a couple of the party members were trying to do real fast, is try and break these two new characters out of their handcuffs. And that met with limited success, but it meant that also not everyone was trying to kill these 3 drow. So it made it so the combat was able to last a couple rounds. And eventually they did kill him. They dispatched the one pretty quickly because they all kind of ganged up. Then it ganged up on the next one. Meanwhile, the third one, he's an archer. He starts booking it. Now, something I was a little frustrated with, I don't want to say frustrated, more of like, I was a little like, dang it, was Sam had been complaining also previously that Ilisfir was not special. He didn't have any kind of cool weapons or anything like that. Brain's got Executioner, Sonya's got Cold Cleaver. There we go. I mean, everyone's kind of got these kind of cool weapons and stuff like that. And I felt, that's fair. Ilisfir doesn't have a lot of ton. He got Arc, the Victor's bow, back from like the Reserve of Secrets, almost all the way at the beginning. And Arc was alright. So he was struggling with the fact that he didn't feel his character was that powerful, and that's certainly true. So what I'd done is I'd given all these 3 drow, one was a spellcaster and had some magical abilities, but he had a decent staff that I felt maybe someone would pick that up. I gave another drow, he was kind of, again, your typical kind of fighter. I gave him a coul sword, and I figured, Sonya might pick that up, but she actually never did. But then I gave the archer dude, I gave him a sweet drow bow, and I gave it, I think it was like a 2d6, something like that. It did all poison damage, a 1d4 poison damage, plus you have to roll like a constitution save, fail, and you're now poisoned. You'll take this d4 every round for 1d6 turns or something like that. And unfortunately, Sam never picked it up, which I was a little like, dang it. I mean, usually the party's so good about looting bodies, and I think this was like the one time they really didn't loot bodies, because I think they got, after killing all 3 these drow, they got talking to these players, to these 2 new characters, to Gray and this dwarf. I think his name was like Grek or something like that. And they talked to them, and they were able to get some information from the keep from them. And like, they're like, hey, do you guys want to come join us? And Gray's like, yeah, sure, I'll come join you guys. Grek was like, no, the dwarf, he was like, nah, I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna keep heading. Thanks for saving me, but I'm gonna leave. And the party's like, all right, that's fine. So they let me go, and at this point, this was more or less right where I think we ended like, a little early, but it was like, 10 minutes earlier than like, right at 11. So we're like, all right, this is a good place to stop. So we ended there. And I think this session was fairly straightforward. It was mostly 2 giant kind of main combats, and it was also kind of slow because we had these new characters, we had these new people at the table who we had to kind of introduce, and people had to get used to them. And I don't think it was an issue. I think everything went well, and it's kind of, one of the calmer moments. And I think, in the next couple of weeks, the next couple sessions, as they make it to Deathlith Keep, because they're basically right next to Deathlith Keep. They just need to get in there. I think as they do that, things will spike up a little bit, and I really hope so, because there's some great stuff I have planned for Deathlith Keep. So hopefully the players enjoy that as much as I did. Well, guys, thanks for sticking through yet another episode. I'm grateful to have all you guys watching. As always, like, comment, subscribe, that sort of thing. Let me know what you think. And as always, guys, we'll see you next time. Stay cool.